Hello and welcome to another episode of Hot Hoops presented by Q30 Sports on Q30 Television. Jon Alba here representing the Q30 Sports basketball beat reporter team and joined by another special guest. They just keep coming one after one after one. Last week we had Samantha Guastel of the women's basketball team. This week it's the head honcho of the men's basketball team, Tom Moore. Thanks so much for hopping on this podcast with us.
My pleasure, John. It's great to be here.
Having you in studio here for the first time. I think this is your first time in here, right?
It is.
All
yes.
right.
Very impressed with your home base.
Oh yeah, not as impressive as the TD Bank Sports Center, but we try to polish the hardwood every now and then over here. This got a nice thing of wax this morning, so
Awesome.
Everything's good to go. But you're in the midst of another so far successful February campaign, 13-10 overall in the season. You struggled out of the gate in conference play. Now 7-7 in that format. How do you assess this last 7 games or so? 5 of 7 you guys have done. It seems like you're kind of starting to hit that stride now.
Yeah, John. I mean, it's funny. Seasons are fascinating. I've said this all the time. Successful seasons, average seasons, they all take different turns. And this year's season's been, we hit a little bump in the non-conference and lost a couple of games that, you know, I thought the Hartford game in particular we shouldn't have lost. And then the BU game comes down to the last shot, and the LaSalle game ends up coming down to the last shot. But overall, when we get through the non-conference schedule at 6-3, you know, with the Oregon State win and a nice win at Albany on the road and a thorough win over Vermont, I felt pretty good. Then to start 0-4 in the league really puts you behind the 8 ball. And there were a few things, you know, 2 games in December that Siena up there was a different Siena team than the 6-8 Siena team right now. They were loaded to bear back then, and they were healthy, and they had their full roster. But the Fairfield game was a tough loss in December, and then, you know, we open up with the 2 losses in the January portion of the MAC schedule. But I'm really proud of what we've done since then. I mean, since the Iona game, we looked at the stats the other day, and Iona's 8-2, we're 7-3, and Manhattan's 7-3. You know, since that point. So I mean, I feel good about how we've played overall since then. I think we are improving, and what we've done, I think, is we've sort of a lot of guys who needed to grow into roles have started to grow into roles. And the thing I'm most proud of is both as a team and a lot of our individuals, we're improving. And that's a good sign at this time of the year.
Why is it that February is that month here, year to year? I mean, we looked back at it last week. Terrell Wallenmarn did a piece for Q30 Sports, and he pointed out 6-2 is your worst stretch in February.
Yeah. Why
is that every year?
You know, I'm proud of 2 things, I think. I think I have a great staff. Our assistant coaches have been with me since day one. Sean Doherty, Eric Eaton, Scott Burrell, Mike Papali. They do a really good job of continuing to work with these guys and push these guys. And also we have high character kids. I think I've said a lot of times, we used to experience this even at UConn with our great teams, these are the dog days of the college basketball season, the middle of January, end of January, first week of February, because March is still like, the excitement of March is still too far in the ahead of you, and you can't really see it down the road. And there's a lot of nagging injuries, and sometimes there's you know, guys who aren't playing get a little disenchanted and things. We've had good kids, and they continue to work, and they continue to try to believe in getting better, and they buy in, and they're unselfish. And, you know, if you have kids who, you know, the kids who are getting 10 shots, if they're complaining all the time that they're not getting 15 shots, or the kid who's playing 6 minutes a game is always complaining that he's not playing 15 minutes a game, then those are the type of things that sometimes can sort of have you struggle in February. But we've had good kids that have been committed to the program over the years. I think that's a big key to it.
You brought up out of conference play. You ended up with a favorable mark in the end there. One of the critiques that has been heard around the MAC media has been that sometimes it doesn't appear like there's that push for that bigger named opponent. Mm-hmm. Have you thought in the past about scheduling a UConn or something where you obviously have roots, or another big name school like Oregon State? Obviously that was a home and home deal you struck. That was something that many viewed favorably, and it ended up being a really big victory for you guys. Have you thought about some bigger name opponents down the line?
Yeah, that's a we could do probably an hour show on that, you and I, about that. And I'm usually too long-winded about this topic. But in general, I think it's a fair criticism of my scheduling over my 8 years. I think, if anything, our non-conference schedule has been somewhat on the weaker side. Now, what you have to understand is I try to take my cue from Jack McDonald, Billy Mecker, and even all the way up the line, Mark Thompson and John Leahy, about what the vision is for men's basketball and how it fits at Quinnipiac, where we are in our development. When I first got here, I think the push to try to get to 20 wins, 18, 20, 22 wins, was stronger than maybe bringing in the big name. I don't know the dynamics of hockey, but like if I could compare it to hockey, because hockey is the other sport up at TD Bank, and Rand and his staff has had great success. I think they're already in what you'd call a Power 6 conference. You know, they're in the ECAC, and that is considered, I'm not a hockey expert, but as good as...
It's a major conference.
Exactly, as good as the one out in Wisconsin, as good as the one at Hockey East and all that stuff. With us being in a mid-major conference now, we're not going to get the high major team to come here in general. We have to come up with all kind of ways. And even as friendly as I was with Coach Calhoun when he was coaching at UConn, and even Kevin Ollie now, there's really no benefit for them to play us at TD Bank. As much as they'd like to do it for me as a friend, they have to put their job first, and there's no benefit to come to a place like this. Now, Monmouth has gotten Villanova to come to their place. That's a tip of the cap, and we got Oregon State to come here. But I think, in general, the push from our administration has been more about trying to win a lot of games. What it's done for us is it has gotten us that the NIT, the 2 CITs, and the CBI appearance, which we haven't done a lot with yet, but it's almost like a baby going. You know, people have to realize we were a Division II program in 1999. You know, so we're still taking our infancy steps, and we've tried to speed it up. And I think in the future you'll see us take more chances. We were actually in talks to play UConn this year up there, and the dates didn't work out. So you might see something now that Coach Calhoun's gone, and I don't have quite that same tie with him that I had. I still am very close with Kevin, but not like I was with him. You might see that in the future too. And we're gonna, I think, as our program now is in this league, I think we can take on a few more, maybe a few more Atlantic 10s mixed in there, and maybe a few more Big East or All-American Conference.
And I think that's a fair assessment to make, especially when you do think that there are the finances that the other teams have to worry about with that stuff. But I love the term they use there. Use state of Quinnipiac basketball. Here you are 8 years after getting hired and whatnot. You found immediate success. You were right in the midst of the NEC. You had a shot at the NCAA tournament. You said that administration was really only thinking 20 wins or so at that point. What's the state of Quinnipiac basketball right now?
We got to get an NCAA tournament berth. Yeah, I mean, that's the next step. You know, I mean, we've averaged 20 wins a year over the last 5, and we've gone to the 4 and postseason tournaments in the last 5. But we have to take another step. And if you'd have said to me 8 years ago, you know, you'd have no NCAA tournament bids in 8 years, I'd be upset. You know, I'd be upset because I have high standards for myself and what this program has afforded me. You know, President Leahy, all the way on down, Jack and Billy and everybody, Mark Thompson, they've given us everything we need to be as successful as possible. And I think with a break or two in some of those wars we had with Robert Morris and some of the wars in the semifinals we had with LIU Brooklyn, that where, you know, maybe we don't catch them in their 3-year window, LIU Brooklyn, where they're that good, or Robert Morris is that good. Maybe we don't leave the MAC 2 years ago. Maybe we leave for the MAC, from the NEC for the MAC this year. We might have 2 NCAA bids. Like everybody in the NEC has told me the last 2 years, last year in particular, that they thought our team last year would have cruised in the NEC. Maybe even this year's team might have won the NEC. So sometimes it's timing, but we'll get there.
I want to bring up last year's team. Last year's team, and you actually see it behind you. There's a QBSM magazine with the title that says Survival of the Fittest. Last year, it really seemed like this was a team that had a legitimate chance at the NCAA tournament. You had strong victory over Iona. You had wins over Manhattan, some of these top perennial teams in these conference. Then Umar Shannon goes down. Was there this sense of unfinished business coming into this year?
Definitely, yeah, definitely. And I think I don't think the whole team handled the Umar injury well. And from me on down, not myself, the staff, and Umar and his teammates, and things were going so well, and everything seemed to be pushing in the right direction, like you mentioned. And the thing that hurt about the Umar injury is who we had to play in order to get to where we needed to go. We knew that going into that last weekend, we were either going to be the 2 seed or the 3 seed, and Manhattan was going to be either the 2 or the 3 seed. And man, as you know, you've covered Manhattan. Their style of play with the pressing and the full court stuff and the traps and how they come at you all game from all different angles. You really need IQ guards that can make passes and shots and think it and understand it. And you really almost can't diagram press breaks sometimes against them because it comes in 3 different stages. We knew losing Umar to beat them was probably, as you know, we beat them at Manhattan without Ouse. For instance, like we didn't need an Ouse or an Ike as much as we needed an Umar to get past them. And sure enough, when we ended up playing them in the semis, it was our undoing was some turnovers in the backcourt early and some turnovers in the backcourt middle to late in part of the game too as well. So, but going into this season, yeah, definitely Z and Ouse carried that mantle. I think Evan Conti carried that mantle too as well, that they felt there was some unfinished business. We felt coming into this year, even though the coaches picked us 5th, we felt coming into this year, I felt we'd be better than 5th. Now that was with Giovanni McClain. And Gio, it's a lot of pressure to say that Gio would have been our Umar this year, but that's what we thought, you know. And the other thing we thought was maybe Sam Dingber and Shays Daniels might be sort of a 2-headed monster to replace.
Package of sorts.
Yeah, to replace Ike's numbers. Maybe not Ike and not be 15 and 10, but maybe between the 2 of them that they might be able to do that. Now, you know, we lose Gio for the whole season. We lose A.J. Sumbry, who would have been another piece up there. And we pretty much lose Sam for 15 or so games. And here we are, the guys we have, we're still in 5th, what the coaches thought we would be before this. So, like I said, I'm proud of the improvements, like the guys that the Justin Harrises have made, the Evan Contis have made, the James Fords have made, the Aaron Hutton have made. So, and Shays. Shays has been very good too. So, overall, I'm happy, but I'm still hungry because there's a lot of stuff still left on the table.
You talked about the Giovanni McClain situation. It seemed that he would have fit perfectly into that mold where Shannon left off. Now you don't have him. You were left scrambling on your feet. You found a guy like Aaron Hutton, who really has stepped up quite nicely as a freshman. This year, you've let these freshmen really come into their own, and that's not something that we've historically seen from your coaching staff in terms of starting. Now, I know in the past you said starting isn't as much of an emphasis with your team. But giving these freshmen a lot of trust, is that a little bit of a change in mentality this year?
Definitely, and it's out of necessity. You know, I told people earlier in the year, you know, sometimes I go home and I have all this anxiety because we'll win a game or we'll lose a game sometimes even, and our top 4 scorers will be Z, Ouse, Justin, and Evan. And you sit there and you go, oh my goodness, how does that bode for next year? So you got to always weigh the development versus the future versus the present. But I told people earlier in the year, we're an old team and a real young team at the same time. You know, our top 4 guys have been here forever, and if you look at our stats, it reads 4 seniors to start. But after that, James Ford didn't play much. Kasim was hurt a lot of last year, and then it's all new guys pretty much. So it was out of necessity, and Aaron was the first guy to stabilize, I think. You know, we tried a bunch of people, and Kasim Chandler has not had as consistent a season as he probably would have liked or we'd like, but he's still a real talented kid. Aaron sort of beat Dimitri Flores to the trough for minutes right away, if you want to say. And James Ford's just sort of gotten better as the year's gone on, and Evan Conti's gotten better. They've sort of finding themselves at a good time. So I've had to play Shays, and I would have played Sam more had he not been hurt. And Aaron and Dimitri were sort of ready to go and get some minutes.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about Drame and Hearst. I don't want to keep it too much longer. I got a few more for you. These two have been making the headlines for your team. Drame is Ousmane Drame. He's the guy that legitimate NBA scouts think he could be someone who could have a future at a high professional level of basketball. And Zaid Hearst is someone who maybe the scouts didn't see coming beforehand and then are like, oh, wait a second, this guy's got something. Yeah. Are these guys playing the best basketball of their lives right now?
I would say, yeah. Yeah, I probably would. You know, Ousmane's had they've been funny. Z is as consistent as the day is long, and he's been that way since day one. Ouse has been very different in terms of his focus and his energy and his effort and his consistency. And that's not, like I said, I love Ouse. I mean, he's been a joy to coach because he's super talented. He's very intelligent. He's stubborn.
He's been a challenge,
He's
too.
been a challenge, yeah, but that's why you coach, you know, and it's been to try to keep developing and try to push the right buttons, and sometimes he's almost too smart for his own good, even, you know. I mean, he's got strong opinions, and he's got ideas of what he should be doing and we should be doing, and he's always been respectful, and I've never had an issue at all with him academically or socially, which is great. And the same with Z. I mean, Z has been fantastic, but Z's one of those kids who's sort of myopic. I mean, he eats, drinks, and sleeps basketball, whereas Oos has other interests and other things. So they're fascinating. It's like all kids. I mean, it's probably like the kids here at Q30. You know, I mean, everybody comes in a slightly different package, and everybody has a different way. And the challenge as leading them and coaching them is to sort of draw out their strengths and try to minimize their weaknesses. But those two kids have been invaluable for our program. Obviously, they've been a part of so much success for us. They've been loyal soldiers for us. I love each kid to death, and it's going to be really hard to not have them around. They've been such a part of the fabric here for the last 4 years.
It's like you said, everybody's got a shape. Now, some people's shapes are round rather than, you know, slim.
Yep.
Mine tends to be more round than it is slim, but everybody has something unique to them.
Yep.
You're absolutely right about that. I have to ask you this. What's it going to take for this team to make the NCAA tournament? And historically, I said you guys have these great Februaries, and then something happens in the conference tournament, or where just you may get off to this big lead, and then something crumbles.
Yep.
What's it going to take for this team to get over that hurdle and get into March Madness?
You know, I think this is one of the things, John. Obviously, with the way the MAC tournament is set up, if you end up outside the top 5, you have to win 4 games in 5 days. But if you end up inside the top 5, you get that first round bye, and you got to win 3 and 3. I think with us, it would be more difficult to win 4 and 5 than it would be to win 3 and 3. Now, I think we're equipped to win 4 and 5, but it would be slightly easier. So the first hurdle we'd try to get is see if we can just pass Canisius and get into this 5th spot, which we're currently tied for right now. But I think a couple things. Number one, I trust we'll rebound against anybody in those games. Number two, I trust we'll guard at a high level against anyone we play, even Iona. Now, that doesn't mean you hold Iona to 60 points if we play them in the MAC tournament, but I think we'll guard them well. The only anomaly to us not guarding well this whole year has been the Niagara game up there in the second half of the Siena game. Those were the only sort of outliers, I think, in terms of statistics or the way we felt. And third, I think we'll have to shoot it just okay. That's the biggest thing, like shooting it from the perimeter just okay. We've had 9 threes on last Thursday night against Monmouth and 14 threes the other day against Niagara. And everyone said, boy, wouldn't it be great if you got this every game? And my retort to that was like, we don't really even need this every game. We just don't need 0 for 15 or 1 for 16 from 3 or 2 for 15 or something like that. We need 4 or 5 threes a game. That is all we need. And it can come from any one of about 5 guys. So if we get, Justin and Shays have been solid. Oos and Z pretty much give you what they give you. It's those perimeter guys. If we can just get decent shooting and decent offense out of those guys, I think we'll be very difficult to beat 3 straight days or 4 out of 5.
And everybody's talked about how wide open the MAC is this year. There's a lot of parity in the conference. You especially brought up how good Iona is, but any given day in those conference tournaments, it's why they play the single elimination games, because you never know what's going to happen, especially when you have a team like Siena who basically has a little bit of home court advantage coming into the MAC tournament. Anything can happen with that. I've got one last question for you, and it's kind of going full circle and relating back to what you said at the beginning of this, the whole state of Quinnipiac basketball. You said when you got hired 8 years, not making an NCAA tournament would have surprised you. If you had to put that cap on one more time, if you had to become Marty McFly and go into the future this time, so we're going back to the future too. Okay. The Cubs have won a World Series already. Where's Quinnipiac basketball in 5 years?
5 years. I'm hoping that we've established ourselves long-term as a top of the MAC team. And that means in the discussion with the Ionas and the Manhattans and the Sienas, I guess to a degree, for 5 more years. If we do that, we'll have broken through the door and we'll have gotten an NCAA tournament bid. So we'll have one within the next 5 years. I'm confident. I think things are just too set up here for it not to happen. And with all due respect to being in a better league now, I just like the direction the program's going, the support we get, my staff, the guys we've been able to draw here, and the guys we'll continue to be able to draw here.
Tom Moore, Quinnipiac men's basketball head coach, 13-10 overall in the season, 7-7 in conference play. Still plenty of basketball left to play here as we head into the final stretch of February, with March closing things out, and then things head up to Albany at the Times Union Center as the MAC Madness gets underway. So thanks again for hopping on Hot Hoops with us. We were very happy we were able to get you on, and we look forward to covering things as all this stretch actually plays out. So if you have any interest in following Q30 Sports on social media, make sure you log on to Twitter, Facebook, and find us at Q30 Sports. That's at Q30 Sports, the symbol that we got going on for you. Very easy to find us. And also online on our website at www.q30television.com. And as I say every single week, if for some reason you find yourself wanting to hear my vocal, uninspired opinions, you can follow me online as well on Twitter at Jon Alba, SFC, JONALBA, SFC. That's all the time we got here on Hot Hoops. For head coach Tom Moore, I'm Jon Alba. We'll see you next time.